When the white man first arrived, we thought they were our ancestors reborn. We welcomed them, but soon we thought they cannot be our kinsmen. Our ancestors would have understood us and respected our way of life. These people did not. They knew none of our laws, understood nothing. They were virtually starving until we showed them where the good land was and where our water holes were. Without us and our knowledge, they would not have survived.
In 1926, an Aboriginal woman, Jane Duron, literate, articulate, and the first ever woman to become a member of the Australia League, white or black, and from Maruya in the Illawarra, wrote to King George V.
I beg to state that it is months and months since these children were at school, and it is a shame to see them going about without an education. At Bateman's Bay there is a public school, so why are they not allowed to attend? I have been writing to different places, namely the Minister for Education, the Child Welfare Department, the Aboriginal Protection Board, also to our Members of Parliament, but cannot get fair play.
Her letter was returned from Buckingham Palace, stamped, not acknowledged. She persevered with the Governor-General, politicians and government departments in Australia, and finally at her instigation, 2 schools were built, one in Bateman's Bay and one at Huskisson.
In the 1960s, the government decided to dredge the sands and move my mum off the camps. They wanted to move her far away to the outback New South Wales, not far from the South Australian border. The unions included Fred Moore, who is an honorary Aboriginal to us, stepped in and stopped them.
Fred Moore has dedicated his life to the trade union movement, the working class, and the welfare of the Aboriginal community throughout New South Wales and Australia. He has held many positions in the Miners' Federation and has the very rare distinction of being a non-Indigenous person asked to become an elder and sit on the council of the Jerinja people.
It came to the Illawarra to stay permanently close to 60 years ago. I had come in and out of the area, and then I stayed here and I worked till I retired. In this area, the waterside workers and others protected the Aboriginal people, and as workers, you know, the mates they work with, well, Bobby Davis and them had to get a ticket to say that they were allowed after work to go in and have a drink, and they had to show this ticket. They said it was a dog ticket, you know, and they would put it across, and the publican deliberately would get it wet, you know, and then he'd say, oh, I can't read that, you'll have to go and get another one, you know, and it cost the fella 10 shillings, which he didn't have, and that'd give the publican a reason to not to serve him, you know.
You could only get a dog ticket through an application, and only a man could get one. It was like applying for immigration, but we were already here. To be successful, an Aboriginal man had to cut all ties with his traditional ways, his family and friends, and to speak only English. You weren't allowed on any circumstances to practice culture. And this was considered assimilation?
In 1961, Unionists Joe Howe and Fred Moore helped set up the South Coast Aboriginal Advancement League. They made Bobby Davis, Auntie Mary's husband, the president of the league, and the 5 aunties were the board.
We found out then Mary Davis was living in an abandoned car with 2 little children, and Bobby, her husband, was battling, and they were trying to get things going, and Mrs. Henry was living in a tent with all her family, and Linda was living over there as well.
Mum wanted simple things: the right to go into a dress shop and try on a dress, to sit with everyone else in the picture theatre, to swim in the local pools, to get a bed in a hospital if we were sick. You think I'm joking, but I'm not. She wanted the things most people took for granted, and she and others achieved these things.
We sorted out those women, singled them out, and we spoke to them and didn't pressurise them in any way, but just spoke of what could be done and how we could do it. And finally, they decided to join the Aboriginal Advancement League. 5 women that was on the committee and was very anxious to get started was 3 older women, which was Dolly Henry, Olga Booth and Gladys Douglas. 2 young ones was Linda Davis, and Mary Davis was the baby of the team.
They were strong women. It runs in my family. Jane Duran, who got those schools built, was my great-great-grandmother. My dad was out there working for the community. He worked hard to make sure our people continued to have access to education.
These courageous women, and to the last day I had a great admiration for them on their courage, because they had everything to lose. They had the Aboriginal Welfare Board, which was a soul-destroying thing, taking their children. The special laws were still on for them. They were fringe dwellers. They had nothing in their life, only sort of poverty and that, and living on riverbanks and all this sort of thing. But they had decency and principle, and we never ever told them what they should do. We asked them, what do you think of this? How will we approach it? What do you think? Because they'd lived it. We were only coming there. They were Aboriginal people. We couldn't think like them. And we said, we're with you, shoulder to shoulder.
In the 1967 referendum, Aboriginals were finally recognised as citizens in their own country. They were given the right to be counted in the census, and all special laws relating only to Aboriginals were abolished. The referendum was overwhelmingly supported by over 90% of the Australian population.
See, the referendum came on in 1967. The Liberal government was still in power. And when the referendum went through, people thought it was, and which it was, it changed the constitution and everything. But no great gains was made out of it till Whitlam come. We were pushing and pushing all the time. But they couldn't do the dirty tricks. The laws had gone for them to use.
My family, the Crews Henry Campbells, have played an important role in the Aboriginal community, and that work I carry on today. My father, Ozzie Crews, accompanied Gough Whitlam to South Africa to attend the Commonwealth Games to protest the treatment of Aboriginal people in Australia.
Today we honour the Indigenous peoples of this land, the oldest continuing cultures in
The word
human
sorry
history.
didn't mean anything to
We
me.
reflect on their
But to hear the Prime Minister say we were the first Australians, that meant more to me than him just saying sorry. You know, there are people I now know that were part of the stolen generation, but I never knew until the day of that speech. They just didn't speak to me about it before.
A new page in Australia's history by righting the wrongs of the past and so moving forward with confidence to the future. We apologise for the laws and policies of successive parliaments.
When people say to me, "What are you?" I say, "I'm an Aboriginal Australian," meaning a native to the land, if you check the dictionary.
We apologise especially for the removal of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children from their families, their communities and their country.
We celebrated the apology here in our community, and there was biggest mob, and it was a really touching moment. But what matters most is what's done now, after it's been said.
To the mothers and the fathers, the brothers and the sisters,
I liked it. It needed to be said.
We say sorry. And for the indignity and degradation thus inflicted on a proud people and a
It's
proud
important to be known as an Aboriginal. There's a distinction in that. Anyone who's born in Australia is Indigenous to this land. Aboriginal is the proper term of respect for my people.
as part of the healing of the nation.
We've still got a long way to go because you can change the laws, but you can't change the attitudes, of people.
We've stood up together, the whole Illawarra community, white, grey, yellow, brown or black. We've set a great example of what can be achieved through our reconciliation, a willingness to open our hearts and understand each other, to listen to each other's stories. We want to see these continue on and on into the next generation and into Australians dreaming, past, present and future. It's all about our land and all about family together.